I was the penultimate pharaoh of ancient Egypt's 18th dynasty. He held the throne of Egypt for a brief 4-year period, although he was a close advisor to 2 and perhaps 3 of the pharaohs who ruled before him, and was said to be the power behind the throne during Tutankhamun's reign. Ay's prenominal royal name, Khepri, means everlasting or the manifestations of Ra, while his birth name Netu reads as I, father of the god. Records and monuments that can be clearly attributed to I are rare, not only due to his short length of reign, but also because his successor, Hormheb, instigated a campaign of damnation memoria against him and other pharaohs associated with the unpopular Amarna period. Origins. I is usually believed to be a native Egyptian from Akhmim. During his short reign, he built a rock-cut chapel in Akhmim and dedicated it to the local deity there, Min. He may have been the son of Uya, who served as a member of the priesthood of Min at Akhmim as well as superintendent of herds in this city, and wife to Uyu. If so, I could have been of partial non-Egyptian, perhaps Syrian blood, since the name Uya was uncommon in Egypt and is suggestive of a foreign background. Uya was an influential nobleman at the royal court of Amenhotep III who was given the rare privilege of having a tomb built for his use in the royal Valley of the Kings, presumably because he was the father of Tia, Amenhotep's chief queen. There are also noted similarities in the physical likenesses of monuments attributed to I and those of the mummy of Uya, and both held similar names and titles. Amarna period. All that is known for certain was that by the time he was permitted to build a tomb for himself at Amarna during the reign of Akhenaten, he had achieved the title of overseer of all the horses of His Majesty, the highest rank in the elite charioteering division of the army, which was just below the rank of general. Prior to this promotion, he appears to have been first a troop commander and then a regular overseer of horses, titles which were found on a box thought to have been part of the original furnishings for his tomb. Other titles listed in this tomb include fan-bearer on the right side of the king, acting scribe of the king, beloved by him, and God's father. The fan-bearer on the right side of the king was a very important position, and is viewed as showing that the bearer had the ear of the ruler. The final God's Father title is the one most associated with I, and was later incorporated into his royal name when he became pharaoh. This title could mean that he was the father-in-law of the pharaoh, suggesting that he was the son of Uya and Chuyu, thus being a brother or half-brother of Tia, brother-in-law to Amenhotep III and the maternal uncle of Akhenaten. If I was the son of Uya, who was a senior military officer during the reign of Amenhotep III, then he likely followed in his father's footsteps, finally inheriting his father's military functions upon his death. Alternatively, it could also mean that he may have had a daughter that married the pharaoh Akhenaten, possibly being the father of Akhenaten's chief wife Nefertiti. Ultimately, there is no evidence to definitively prove either hypothesis. The two theories are not mutually exclusive, but either relationship would explain the exalted status to which I rose during Akhenaten's Amarna interlude, when the royal family turned their backs on Egypt's traditional gods and experimented, for a dozen years or so, with monotheism, an experiment that, whether out of conviction or convenience, I appears to have followed under the reign of Akhenaten. The great hymn to the Aten is also found in his Amarna tomb, which was built during his service under Akhenaten. It is likely that this was required by Akhenaten, though not evidence that I agreed with Akhenaten's decision to promote the Aten above all other gods. It suggests that he did believe in Akhenaten's religious revolution. His wife Te was born a commoner but was given the title nurse of the pharaoh's great wife. If she were the mother of Nefertiti, she would be expected to have the royal title mother of the pharaoh's great wife instead. Had I been the father of Nefertiti, then Te would have been her stepmother. In several Amarna tomb chapels there is a woman whose name begins with Mut, who had the title sister of the pharaoh's great wife. This could also be a daughter of Awais by his wife Tay, and it is known that his successor Horemheb married a woman with the name Muknojimet. Tutankhamun. Awais' reign was preceded by that of King Tutankhamun, who ascended to the throne at the age of 8 or 9, at a time of great tension between the new monotheism and the old polytheism. He was assisted in his kingly duties by his predecessors' two closest advisors, Grand Vizier I and General of the Armies Horemheb. Tutankhamun's 9-year reign, largely under Awais' direction, saw the gradual return of the old gods, and, with that, the restoration of the power of the Amun priesthood, who had lost their influence over Egypt under Akhenaten. Egyptologist Bob Brier suggested that I murdered Tutankhamun in order to usurp the throne, a claim which was based on X-ray examinations of the body done in 1968. He also alleged that Ankhesenamun and the Hittite prince she was about to marry were also murdered at his orders. This murder theory was not accepted by all scholars, and more detailed CT scans of the mummy undertaken by National Geographic suggested that Tutankhamun did not die from a blow to his head as Brier had theorized. The National Geographic forensic researchers instead presented a new theory that Tutankhamun died from an infection caused by a badly broken leg, since he is often portrayed as walking with a cane due to spina bifida, a hereditary trait in his family on his father's side. The bone fragments found in Tutankhamun's skull were most likely the result of post-mortem damage caused by Howard Carter's initial examination of the Boy King, because they show no evidence of being inundated with the embalming fluid used to preserve the pharaoh for the afterlife. However, Brier has stated that the bone fragment in the skull is not relevant to the issue of whether Tutankhamun was murdered, acknowledging that it was likely caused by the embalmers. The evidence Brier presents for the murder is a dark spot on the base of the skull, indicating a blow to the head. Dr. Gerald Irwin agrees with Brier on this point. When the results of the CT scan examination had been published, many scientists accepted its findings, but some still believe the mystery of Tutankhamun's death is far from solved and continue to support the older murder theory. There are books that have subsequently been published that adhere to the original murder theory and dispute the conclusions reached by the CT scan team, though also citing other means of murder, such as poisoning. In 2010, a team led by Zahi Hawass reported that he had died from complications caused by malaria and Kohler's disease, but another team from the Bernhard NOCT Institute for Tropical Medicine in Hamburg believes his death was caused by sickle cell disease. Tutankhamun could very well have died from this, combined with the infection in his knee. I was also buried in the tomb intended for Tutankhamun in the West Valley of the Kings, and Tutankhamun in Awais' intended tomb in the East Valley of the Kings. Rule as the pharaoh. Tutankhamun's death at the age of 18 or 19, together with his failure to produce an heir, left a power vacuum that his Grand Vizier I was quick to fill. I is depicted conducting the funerary rites for the deceased monarch and assuming the role of heir. The grounds on which I based his successful claim to power are not entirely clear. The commander of the army, Horemheb, had actually been designated as the IDNW, or Deputy of the Lord of the Two Lands, under Tutankhamun and was presumed to be the Boy King's heir apparent and successor. It appears that Horemheb was outmaneuvered to the throne by I, who married Ankhesenamun, Tutankhamun's widow, in order to legitimize his claim to the throne. I was certainly a powerful figure. He was close to the center of political power at the royal palace for some 25 years under both Tutankhamun and Akhenaten. But this was insufficient grounds to legitimize his claims to the throne in the highly hierarchical society of ancient Egypt. Since he was of non-royal birth, especially at a time of domestic upheaval without his marriage to Tutankhamun's widow, since he was already advanced in age upon his accession, I ruled Egypt in his own right for only 4 years. During this period, He consolidated the return to the old religious ways that he had initiated as senior advisor and constructed a mortuary temple at Medinet Habu for his own use. A stela of Nakhmine, a military officer under Tutankhamun I, who was Ay's chosen successor, is dated to year 4, Ibiakit day 1 of Ay's reign. Manetho's epitome assigns a reign length of 4 years and 1 month to Hormheb, and this was usually assigned to I based on this year 4 dated stela. However, it is now believed that figure should be raised by a decade to 14 years and 1 month and attributed to Hormheb instead, as Manethor intended. Hence, Ay's precise reign length is unknown, and he could have ruled for as long as 7 to 9 years. Since most of his monuments and his funerary temple at Medinet Habu were either destroyed or usurped by his successor, Hormheb. Royal succession. Prior to his death, I designated Nakhmine to succeed him as pharaoh. However, Ay's succession plan went awry, as Hormheb became the last king of Egypt's 18th dynasty instead of Nakhmine. The fact that Nakhmine was Ay's intended heir is strongly implied by an inscription carved on a dyad funerary statue of Nakhmine and his spouse, which was presumably made during Ay's reign. Nakhmine is clearly given the titles Rpat and Znzw. The only conclusion which can be drawn here is that Nakhmine was either a son or an adopted son of Ay's, and that I was grooming Nakhmine for the royal succession instead of Hormheb. The Egyptologists Aidan Dodson and Diane Hilton observed that the aforementioned statue is broken after the signs for king's son of, and there has been considerable debate as to whether it continued to say Cush, making Nakhmine a viceroy of Nubia, or of his body, making him an actual royal son. Since there is no other evidence for Nakhmine as a viceroy with another man, Pazari, attested in office at this period as well, the latter suggestion seems the most likely, as Nakhmine donated items to the burial of Tutankhamun without such a title. It follows that he only became a king's son subsequently, presumably under I. This theory is supported by the evidence of intentional damage to Nakhmine's statue, since I was amongst the Amarna pharaohs whose memories were execrated under later rulers' aftermath. It appears that one of Hormheb's undertakings as pharaoh was to eliminate all references to the monotheistic experiment, a process that included expunging the name of his immediate predecessors, especially I, from the historical record. Hormheb desecrated Ay's burial and had most of Ay's royal cartouches in his WV-23 tomb wall paintings erased, while his sarcophagus was smashed into numerous fragments. However, the sarcophagus lid was discovered in 1972 by Otto Chardin, the U.S. Egyptologist who opened tomb KV-63 in the Valley of the Kings in 2006. It still preserved Ay's cartouche. The sarcophagus had been buried under debris in this king's tomb. Hormheb also usurped Ay's mortuary temple at Medinet Habu for his own use. Uvio Holscher, who excavated the temple in the early 1930s, provides these interesting details concerning the state of Hormheb's mortuary temple. Wherever a cartouche has been preserved, the name of i.e., I, has been erased and replaced by that of his successor Hormheb. In all but a single instance had it been overlooked and no change made. Thus the temple, which I had begun and finished, at least in the rear rooms with their fine paintings, was usurped by his successor and was thenceforth known as the Temple of Hormheb. Seals on stoppers of wine jars from the temple magazines read, "Wine from the Temple of Hormheb family." I is believed to be the son of Uya and Thuya, and therefore a brother of Queen Tia, wife of Amenhotep III, and the prophet of Amun, Anan. Hence, he would be the uncle of pharaohs Akhenaten and Smenkhkare. His assumed wife was Iuy, mother of Nakhmine, chosen successor of I. His great royal wife was Tay, wet nurse to Queen Nefertiti. I is believed to be the father of Queen Nefertiti, wife of Akhenaten, and Mubinrit or Mupnadme depending on how the name is read. Mupnadme being the wife of Hormheb. Their mother is plausibly the adoratrix of Min, songstress of Isis, Iuy, who is known to be the mother of Nakhtmine, Ay's chosen successor, and presumed son. Therefore, he is believed to be the grandfather of Queen Meriteten, Maketeten, Queen Ankhesenamun, Neferneferuaten Tasheret, Neferneferu and Seti Penri. In fiction, I appears as a villain in the 17th book in Lucian de Guitta's Papyrus comic book series. I appears as a major character in P.C. Doherty's trilogy of ancient Egyptian novels, An Evil Spirit Out of the West, The Season of the Hyena and the Year of the Cobra. Kerry Greenwood's novel, Out of the Black Land, features him as a greedy villain whose sole goal was accruing wealth. He is a character in Wolfgang Holbein's Die Prophecy Hung. He is also a major character in Michelle Moran's best-selling novel Nefertiti. I is the villain of Lucille Morrison's young adult novel The Lost Queen of Egypt. He is also a character in Mika Walteri's historical novel The Egyptian. I serves as a central character in Tut, portrayed by Ben Kingsley. I is a minor character in the time travel to the 18th dynasty in Mr. Peabody and Sherman.